Hello my wonderful viewers. In this tutorial we'll be looking at promises. So this is a sample of code I had written to test out how promises really work, and I came across this great opportunity to understand them. So promises are really objects that really take a callback function. So if you watched previous tutorials, you've actually seen me talk about how callback functions actually work. So by now you actually have a brief overview of how callback functions work. So promises in this case enable you to actually do something asynchronous programming. So basically you have to do something, so when that thing finishes, the next thing is considered and is done. So so the first part of this code is pretty much a real world example where you have a kid and really wants a sweet from you, and you don't have money actually. So you have a promise for that. So a promise can have 4 states. The first state is resolved state, second state is fulfilled state, the third state is settled, and the fourth state is pending. So pretty much this covers these two callbacks that are actually called in this callback, and in this case are just parameters are used by this promise object to actually do something once the code inside our promise has finished. So in this case the code inside our promise is given sweet. So pretty much this is just a statement, and the statement is given sweet variable being given out a value of false. So this pretty much means that you haven't given the child the sweet. So this really means that you have no money. So according to me and according to this example, you have no money. So the promise then will execute. So then means that the promise is resolved, and then we'll take the callback function placed here and substitute it so that you can have the resolve function. Okay, so this resolve function is pretty much this argument here is pretty much the same here. So this will be taken, and whatever you gave out here will be here, and then message will now be displayed to the end user. Okay, the console log will be displayed to the user, and if you have no money, which means that you have called the rejected, which is then called by the dot catch, will execute the callback function called by the reject, and then we'll just hand out that you have no money. So we expect that you have no money when we run the code. So, okay, so yeah, so you have no money. So let's say you want to change the code. So you have the true, you have true, so in this case you have money, right, and you've given the sweet. So so you've given the sweet, and that's pretty much an easy way of looking at promises. So in the next lines of code I had was to test out nested promises, and they really have a small but great syntax, and let's see what I'm talking about. So pretty much this nested promises is after one promise executes, the next promise executes, and the next promise execute. So I use the real world scenario. So after you've woken up, the next logical step will be maybe to wash your face and maybe to brush your teeth. And this line of code, these lines of code from 45 to 51 really explains how this should be done. So here you can see I have no reject statement, so pretty much I have to resolve it so that it can work. So it has actually placed woke up, wash face and brush teeth. So this is wake up is actually a function. That's why you see I have these two parentheses here, and the function returns a promise, and the promise has actually the callback function, and it's only resolved. So once this executes, then that means that this promise can then be, this function can then be executed, can then have the then property, since actually this function returns the promise attribute, promise object. So then is then called, and then this now returns wash. Wash is then a promise also, because it returns this other promise. So wash is then returned, and then function, the message which is now gotten from wash, from the last function to be the last resolve. So this is pretty much this resolve, which concatenates the earlier message and the new message. So once it's returned, then it has a then statement which now brings the message forth here, brings this message forth, and then when this message is brought forth, and then it's outputted by the console.log message, the console.log. So that pretty much works. And I'd like us to have one example. So taking over 3 steps needed to be taken. So let's say you have a phone, right? You have to maybe place, let's say boot it, put the operating system, and later on input pin, and then later on you open up. So these are 3 logical steps that you can take when wanting to open an app from a closed phone. So the first promise will be boot the OS. So I'm going to call it BOS, boot OS. So var BOS, right? And this actually takes a function, right? And the function actually takes a parameter. So this is actually the message that will be displayed to the user. And now here then we'll return whatever is gotten. So this is we'll return actually a new promise, and like I said, it takes a callback function, and the callback function does take the resolve and reject. And this pretty much just resolves. So that's complete. So BOS is complete. So the next step is input pin. So you have to input pin, and it will just tell you input pin, and the last step will be let me have this message, whatever message that will be returned, whatever message that will be then returned will be passed here. So message plus inputted pin. So let me have a comma here, yeah, and now the last step will be opening an app. So let's say open up. So let me call it OApp. So that's pretty much it. So the first logical step here, since our promises are pretty much done, the first logical step will be to boot OS. So here then will be called, since it actually returns a promise. So and this promise then is equivalent to this callback function then placed here, and this callback function then will have the message property, since it actually takes whatever message is here. So then this callback now, since it's just a like any other function, it can return an actual promise. So let me have the next step was input pin, okay, and it took the message, right? And the next logical step will then be to call then and pass a callback function, and the callback function pretty much will take the message from whatever is returned here. Okay, so it's like passing messages down, concatenating them. So this will then return the last item, which is OUP, and OUP will then take the message and add it to its message, and then now pass it out in the resolve function. And now here we'll call then again, and that's the final then. So function, you could have the message, and then just have log and just say finished, and plus message. So that's pretty much it. So I can just view if whatever I have done is the correct thing. So it says finished, boot OS, and inputted pin, and open up. So this process have been finished. So this first has finished, and then this then has finished. This first has finished, this has finished, this has finished, and then I then called after each and every function, after each and every promise is fulfilled, then this is then called to display the final concatenated message plus finished. So that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you've understood promises, and if you haven't, just comment and I'll be more than happy to help you. So until next time, happy coding, and if you like the video, subscribe.